The world watches with bated breath as the conflict in Ukraine continues to unfold. Hope for a swift resolution dwindles with each passing day. The human cost of this war is immeasurable, leaving a trail of devastation and displacement in its wake. The geopolitical implications are far-reaching, shaking the foundations of international order and security. As we navigate this complex landscape, one thing is clear: the stakes are incredibly high, with global ramifications that extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. The recent meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in Riyadh offered a glimmer of hope. The prospect of a ceasefire, however fragile, provided a much-needed respite from the relentless news of violence and destruction. Yet, beneath the surface of these diplomatic efforts, lies a complex web of conflicting interests, strategic calculations, and historical grievances. The path to peace is fraught with obstacles, and the road ahead remains treacherous. The outcome of this conflict will have profound implications for the future of Europe, the balance of global power, and the rules-based international order that has governed relations between nations for decades. As we grapple with the immediate challenges of this crisis, it is essential to look beyond the headlines and understand the underlying forces shaping this conflict and its potential consequences. While the conflict in Ukraine is often portrayed as a clash of ideologies or a struggle for territorial integrity, there is another, less visible dimension to this conflict: the battle for control over vital natural resources. Beneath Ukraine's fertile plains lies a treasure trove of raw materials, including vast reserves of rare earth elements, the critical components powering our modern technology. These rare earth elements are essential for everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced weapon systems and renewable energy technologies. Control over these resources has become a key factor in the global race for technological supremacy and economic dominance. China currently dominates the global rare earth market, controlling a significant portion of both production and processing. This dominance has given Beijing considerable leverage in international affairs, allowing it to exert influence over key industries and supply chains. The conflict in Ukraine has exposed the vulnerabilities of relying on a single country for these critical materials, prompting a scramble among other nations to secure alternative sources. Ukraine's vast reserves of rare earth elements have made it a focal point in this geopolitical chess game. The country possesses some of the world's largest deposits of these critical minerals, yet their extraction and processing remain largely underdeveloped. This untapped potential has attracted the attention of global powers, each seeking to secure access to these valuable resources and reduce their dependence on China. The conflict in Ukraine, therefore, represents not only a humanitarian crisis, but also a struggle for economic and technological dominance in the 21st century. The conflict in Ukraine has brought to the fore a resurgence of great power competition, with the United States and Russia vying for influence in this strategically important region. For Russia, Ukraine represents a vital buffer zone between itself and NATO, a military alliance it views as an existential threat. Moscow's actions in Ukraine can be seen as an attempt to reassert its dominance in its near abroad and prevent the encroachment of Western influence. The United States, on the other hand, views Ukraine as a crucial partner in its efforts to contain Russian expansionism and promote democracy and the rule of law in the region. Washington has provided significant military and financial assistance to Ukraine, bolstering its defenses and signaling its commitment to its security. Beyond the immediate security concerns, the United States also has a vested interest in ensuring that Ukraine's vast natural resources, including its rare earth elements, do not fall under the control of a hostile power. The competition between the United States and Russia in Ukraine is not merely a geopolitical struggle, it is also an economic one. Control over Ukraine's resources, particularly its rare earth elements, could provide a significant advantage in the global marketplace. The United States, seeking to reduce its reliance on China for these critical materials, sees an opportunity to bolster its own technological edge and economic competitiveness by securing access to Ukraine's untapped potential. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has emerged as a defiant and resolute leader in the face of Russian aggression. His unwavering commitment to Ukrainian sovereignty and his impassioned pleas for international support have rallied global attention and galvanized condemnation of Russia's actions. However, Zelenskyy has also expressed deep frustration and disappointment over his exclusion from the recent peace talks in Riyadh. Zelenskyy's stance is clear: any agreement reached without Ukraine's direct involvement is unacceptable. He argues that Ukraine, as the country directly affected by the conflict, must have a seat at the negotiating table and a voice in shaping its own destiny. He has criticized the international community for its willingness to negotiate with Russia without fully consulting with Ukraine, questioning whether these talks are truly aimed at achieving a just and lasting peace, or merely serving the interests of external powers. Zelensky's exclusion from the Riyadh talks has raised concerns about the transparency and inclusivity of the peace process. Critics argue that sidelining Ukraine risks legitimizing Russia's aggression and undermining the principles of international law and diplomacy. They argue that true and lasting peace can only be achieved through a process that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and gives its people a voice in shaping their own future. Europe's calculated caution, navigating the risks of premature peace. European leaders have expressed cautious optimism about the potential for a ceasefire in Ukraine, but they have also voiced concerns about the risks of a premature peace. They argue that a ceasefire alone is insufficient and that any lasting solution must address the root causes of the conflict, including Russia's annexation of Crimea and its support for separatists in eastern Ukraine. They fear that a ceasefire without a comprehensive political settlement could simply freeze the conflict in place, allowing Russia to regroup and potentially launch a renewed offensive in the future. European leaders have emphasized the need for a peace agreement that upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and right to self-determination. They have also stressed the importance of ensuring Ukraine's security in the long term, potentially through security guarantees from NATO or other international organizations. However, there are divisions within Europe about the extent to which they are willing to confront Russia militarily or impose further economic sanctions. France and Germany, key players in the Normandy format negotiations, have taken a leading role in diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis. They have urged both sides to show restraint and engage in dialogue, while also emphasizing the need for Russia to de-escalate the situation and respect Ukraine's territorial integrity. The European Union has imposed a series of sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Ukraine, targeting individuals, companies, and sectors of the Russian economy. However, these sanctions have had a limited impact on Russia's behavior, and there is debate within Europe about the effectiveness of further economic measures. Trump's trade tactics, tariffs, and the pursuit of American interests. U.S. President Donald Trump has injected a new element of uncertainty into the already volatile geopolitical landscape with his recent trade pronouncements. Trump, known for his unconventional and often confrontational approach to foreign policy, has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on imported automobiles, chips, and pharmaceuticals, a move that has sent shockwaves through global markets and raised concerns about a potential trade war. Trump's trade policies have been characterized by a focus on protecting American jobs and industries, often at the expense of multilateral trade agreements and established norms of international cooperation. He has argued that previous administrations have allowed other countries, particularly China, to take advantage of the United States in trade deals, resulting in job losses and a decline in American manufacturing. His tariffs on Chinese goods, steel, and aluminum have already strained relations with key trading partners and disrupted global supply chains. Trump's latest tariff threats have been met with criticism from both domestic and international actors. Business groups have warned that these tariffs will raise prices for consumers, harm American businesses that rely on imported goods, and invite retaliation from other countries. China has already criticized these tariffs at a World Trade Organization meeting, signaling its willingness to defend its interests in the face of American pressure. The European Union, already embroiled in trade disputes with the United States over steel and aluminum tariffs, has expressed concern about the potential for further escalation. Overall, the European economy is in stagflation amid the Ukraine war and Trump trade war tantrum. A fragile hope, high-level talks, and the uncertain path to peace. The recent high-level talks between U.S. and Russian officials in Riyadh have offered a glimmer of hope in the midst of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The agreement to form high-level teams to support peace negotiations represents a significant step forward, signaling a willingness on both sides to engage in dialogue and explore avenues for de-escalation. However, the path to peace remains uncertain, fraught with obstacles and potential pitfalls. The exclusion of Ukrainian President Zelenskyy from these initial talks has raised concerns about the transparency and inclusivity of the peace process. Zelenskyy's insistence on Ukraine's right to participate in any negotiations that directly affect its future is understandable, and his absence from the table risks undermining the legitimacy of any agreement reached. Any lasting solution to the conflict must address Ukraine's security concerns and respect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The success of these high-level talks will depend on the willingness of all parties to engage in good faith negotiations and make difficult compromises. Russia must be prepared to withdraw its forces from Ukrainian territory, while the United States and its allies must be willing to address Russia's legitimate security concerns and offer concrete security guarantees. The international community must remain united in its condemnation of Russia's aggression and its support for Ukraine's right to self-determination. The price of conflict, economic fallout, and global market volatility. The conflict in Ukraine has had a profound impact on the global economy, exacerbating existing inflationary pressures, disrupting supply chains, and fueling uncertainty in financial markets. The war has sent shockwaves through energy markets as Russia is a major exporter of oil and gas. The surge in energy prices has contributed to rising inflation worldwide, squeezing household budgets and raising concerns about a global recession. The conflict has also disrupted global supply chains, as Ukraine and Russia are major producers of agricultural commodities such as wheat and sunflower oil. The disruption to these exports has led to food shortages and price spikes in many parts of the world, particularly in developing countries that rely heavily on imports from these countries. The International Monetary Fund has warned that the war in Ukraine is a seismic event for the global economy, and it has downgraded its growth forecasts for 2023 and 2024. Financial markets have also been volatile since the start of the conflict, as investors weigh the economic fallout of the war and the potential for a wider geopolitical conflagration. The uncertainty surrounding the conflict has led to a flight to safety, with investors seeking refuge in safe haven assets such as gold and U.S. Treasury bonds. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, a key barometer of U.S. stock market performance, has experienced significant fluctuations since the start of the year, reflecting investor anxiety and uncertainty about the future. The future of global order, resource control, and the reshaping of geopolitics. The conflict in Ukraine has exposed the fragility of the post-Cold War order and highlighted the growing importance of resource control in shaping global power dynamics. The war has accelerated a shift away from a unipolar world dominated by the United States towards a more multipolar system, characterized by competition between great powers and regional blocs. In this new era, access to and control over critical resources, particularly rare earth elements, will be a key determinant of economic and military power. The conflict has also underscored the importance of economic interdependence and the vulnerabilities it creates. The weaponization of trade and finance by Western countries in response to Russia's aggression has demonstrated the potential for economic warfare to reshape geopolitical alliances and undermine global stability. Countries are increasingly seeking to diversify their supply chains and reduce their dependence on potentially hostile powers for critical resources. The conflict in Ukraine has served as a wake-up call for many countries, prompting them to rethink their energy security, supply chain resilience, and strategic alliances. The war has accelerated the trend towards deglobalization, as countries prioritize national interests and seek to reduce their reliance on globalized supply chains. This shift towards greater regionalization and economic nationalism could have profound implications for the future of globalization and the rules-based international order.